Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am Christine Dixon of The Ordinary Sacred, and I'm continuing this conversation about this dynamic between people that have a front-facing cluster of extreme burden parts that are me, taking parts, and can, in our culture, be called narcissistic, and other people who might have a more dominant front-facing cluster of parts that are all about you, whatever you want at the expense of me, that can be called codependent parts, and how they attract and interact with each other. And today I want to talk really about how we all have both sets of parts inside of us. One may be completely suppressed or repressed. They may toggle back and forth. These parts are not naturally burdened. They're not naturally extreme. They each have really valuable qualities, but they exist within us. And then what does it look like to use internal family systems in general to unburden these parts and heal them? And then in the next video that'll come out on Wednesday, I will give a very specific example of particularly codependent parts in my system and exactly what it looked like for them to heal and unburden. Okay, so let me share my screen. Oh, let me go back up. Hold on. Okay, so like I said, we each have these polarized parts within us. We can have narcissistic parts and codependent fawning parts, whatever you want to call them, right? The takers and the givers. And one may be dominant and the other suppressed or repressed, or they may swing back and forth, like I said. And so the difference between suppressed and repressed in experience is, let's say your dominant parts are the people-pleasing fawning parts. And so you might also develop inner critics who have learned to suppress any type of anger in your system, right? So anytime you have a feeling of anger, which again, at its when it's not extreme, when it's it's just naturally valuable, healthy state, anger tells us that we have an unmet need, a boundary's been crossed, some injustice has been done, right? It's a really helpful alert system to us. But if we get the message that it's never okay to be angry, it's dangerous if we show anger to our caregiver or teacher, we may develop parts that actively try to suppress the anger. So whenever we even feel anger come up, a part shames it and says, oh, you bad, selfish person, get that down, right? And sometimes some of our parts, maybe our codependent, people-pleasing parts, may completely repress the parts that hold healthy self-value, anger, etc. And so that's going to be where someone says, anger? I don't ever experience anger. What is that? I'm never angry, right? So that's just completely out of their consciousness. So when it's suppressed, you're going to feel this struggle. The anger is trying to come up. Other parts are actively, criticizing, pushing it down. If it's repressed, you're kind of asleep to your anger. You're just not even really aware of it. And it can happen the other direction as well. You can have a dominant narcissistic parts that genuinely think it is unsafe to consider other people, to be vulnerable or lend, any kind of sign of weakness, to other people. So the quote unquote narcissistic parts, I don't love that word, but the taking parts that have had to like push your own value and your own needs out front are repressing any part that considers other people, right? So that can happen either way. So again, usually one is more extreme, and the other tries to balance it out. And it may be overt or covert, right? So sometimes we'll have parts that are really extreme, let's say a people-pleasing part, and it pushes us beyond our limitations. Like I have to please this person or else. So I've got to trample my own needs and my own capacities. And then it's balanced out by just complete collapse to have a legitimate excuse to not be able to, you know, caretake other people and give and give and give anymore. And other times we'll have this dominant people pleasing part that will just, like, mine is kind of like this zombie that's just like, yes, I will do what you say. But then afterward, the one that holds self-value comes up and feels resentment, right? That's kind of how you know that you have people-pleasing parts, because they're often polarized with these parts that do feel anger and resentment, but they're more internalized rather than outward. So you might find that you're kind of grumbling and complaining inside, or maybe complaining to someone you're close to, right? You say yes to this person, and then to the person you're close to, you're just constantly complaining and saying how awful they are for having asked you, right? Because your people-pleasing part is dominant. It says, I have to do this, and then the angry part is like, oh, but I hate that I have to do that, and how dare they even ask me, for this. So again, it's this real, the parts exist inside and manifest or express themselves in some sort of way. If they've been, let's say your anger's been completely repressed, likely it will, I say, come out sideways. It'll come out in physical disease, physical pain, ailments like that, or depression, right? That anger turned inward. So it's going to come out in some way. So both narcissistic taker parts and codependent giver parts are protective and burdened, right? When these parts are unburdened, they have a natural value, right? The narcissistic taker part is about valuing you and your needs and being loyal to you and your needs. The giver codependent part, when it's unburdened, is really about being able to consider other people and get along socially and have belonging, right? One really values authenticity, one really values belonging, and we really need both. And so when we're self-led, it's a both and, you and me, right? I am most highly equipped to know my own needs and to advocate for my needs, but I also consider your needs. And together we come up with this creative, way of meeting all of our needs and release specific strategies. So the key to healing this is to go to the parts that are stuck back in trauma, who are being protected by the extreme part. Whether you have an extreme codependent, caretaking, people-pleasing cluster of parts, or you have a really dominant cluster of, heck no, I'm not going to do anything you want me to do, kind of like rebellious, pushback, taking parts. They're extreme, right? And when they're extreme and they feel like I have to do this, that means they're burdened. That means they're protecting something underneath, and they cannot stop or relax until what they protect is healed. Okay, so what does it look like in IFS to heal these parts? And it's really the same whether it's a narcissistic part or the codependent part. It might look different in getting to them because there might be other parts blocking the way, or they might have different concerns about being met by self-energy and different things like that. So the process of getting to these parts might look a little bit different. But basically, we get to know the part who is extreme, as well as the parts who hate, shame, or criticize them. So for example, if the people-pleasing part has been suppressing or repressing the self-agency, angry part for a really long time, you're going to probably have to get to know the people-pleasing part first, gain trust with that part so that it will allow you, it'll rest back and allow you, yourself that's not a part, to go toward the part of you that does hold that anger. So the first step is always validating and befriending and really getting to know the parts who are opposed to the part you're trying to go toward, because you really need their permission. Sometimes it's just a you know, are you willing to step back for 2 minutes and just see what happens if you let me go toward this part with curiosity, right? And if they can't, then we meet their concerns. What are you afraid would happen? You know, they're afraid the other part's going to take over, and we can say, no, that's not at all the goal. The goal is just for me to be the adult in the room and to listen to them so I can help them so they don't have to be so extreme. And the parts that hate them go, oh, yes, if you can help them not be so extreme, that would be wonderful. Yes, please. They usually really want us to help once they think it's possible. So we get permission to go to the extreme parts without judgment, to really listen to them, to really get why they're doing what they're doing, to understand them, appreciate them, and help them with, what they protect. And it reminds me of this story where I think it was someone who came up to William Penn. He had converted, I think, to Quakerism, which is, a very nonviolent sect of Christianity. But he was this nobleman and he carried a sword. And I can't remember who it was. It might have been the guy who started Quakerism. I don't know. But he wanted to be a Quaker, but he didn't want to release his sword. And the guy who was helping him convert, I don't know what he was saying. He said, yeah, that's okay. You don't have to release your sword until you feel that it is safe enough and you can, of your own will, drop your sword. Right? That's the same message that the self gives these parts. I get that you can't stop being extreme in this way until there's no threat anymore to you, right? So sometimes people are in an abusive situation currently. And so those protective parts, there's no way they're going to drop their sword, right? There's a current threat in front of them. But sometimes they just perceive a threat because they have a part that's stuck in the past when there was a threat. And we can offer to go and heal and bring that part into the present. And then they go, I don't need to do this anymore, right? And they can naturally stop of their own will. There's never any forcing of parts to stop anything. So we learn about their history, how they are protected us in the past. We show them appreciation. When they show us, what they're really afraid would happen, what they're protecting us from, what parts are stuck in the past, we naturally feel appreciative. We don't have to force ourselves to feel appreciative at all. So if you're blended with parts that don't feel appreciative, you can ask them for space. And then, once we do show protective parts appreciation, they often will usher us in to help the parts they protect because now they feel safe and seen by us. And they say, okay, you really get it now. You get my good intention that I'm actually trying to protect these vulnerable parts. So now I trust you with me. So now I can trust you to go to what I protect. So we go to the parts that are stuck in past trauma or attachment wounding or cultural burdening. Once the protective parts have ushered us into that. And then these are the steps of internal family systems. We witness, maybe there's a part that's stuck back in a really intense moment of punishment or shaming or neglect or something that's happening when they're young. And we go back there and we witness it. We really get it. I get how hard this was for you. I get your experience. What else do you want me to see? What else do you want me to know? And we just keep asking anything else, until they are done. And in my experience, sometimes they're done in 2 minutes and sometimes they're done in a year. They just have, especially complex trauma, they have a lot to show us. And the self is just so patient and says, I want to get it. I want to really, the trauma is caused because these young parts have experienced something without a compassionate witness. So we're going back in time to be the compassionate witness that they didn't have back then. And to say, wow, I really get this. This was not okay. You did not deserve this, right? And we provide that for them. And then reparent or redo, right? Is there anything you want me to do with or for you back here, right? Do you want me to help you stand up to a bully or to your parent, or do you want me to, what's fascinating is when you go back and you ask this question and you just receive an answer, you don't ever have to think anything up. These are really young parts and they will have ideas, I want you to create a cape that helps me fly away, or, whatever they want your help doing. And then once everything has kind of been set right back there and that where they're stuck, they can come out of that time and place. They don't have to stay there. So you can offer to retrieve them and update them, bring them to a safe place in the present. They can even come with you in your life and kind of see where you are now and the new capacities and environment that you have. And then once they're in a safe place, we ask, where in or around your body do you carry whatever you got back there, which might have been a belief, at the root of a lot of narcissistic and codependent parts is this deep shame, deep belief, I am worthless, I am unlovable, right? So we can identify where they carry that in or around their body and release it to one of the elements: air, water, fire, earth, light, really anything that any way that they want to. Again, if you just receive from them, they'll tell you exactly. It's amazing. Our young parts are often very creative. And then the final step is integrating these parts. Someone asked me about this recently. What does integration mean? And I'm going to stop sharing so you can see me, and I'll explain this. So they were saying that someone had told them that integrate essentially means that the parts come back into the self and are kind of absorbed by the self and become one, and that her parts were resistant to that because their biggest fear was of being obliterated, being, not having their own individuality and identity. And so I said, yeah, I can see how that word sounds like that, but that's not at all what it means in IFS. We are never trying to get rid of a part. We're just trying to help it release its burden. And so in IFS, the word integration means basically that once a part is unburdened, they've been able to give up the extreme, painful beliefs or emotions, or if they're a protector, the extreme role that they had to carry. Once they're able to give that up, now they resume their naturally valuable qualities, usually of, a lot of self-like qualities: presence, creativity, playfulness. And they integrate now into the inner family as a naturally valuable member of the family. So especially when a part has been exiled, it's been pushed on, by other parts into our subconscious or unconscious. There's this resurrection. It comes out and now it releases its burdens and has their naturally valuable qualities and comes into the family because it wasn't in the family before, right? A lot of people will ask me, once you unburden in exile, is it an exile anymore? And I'll say, no, it's not. It's just a naturally valuable inner child, right? Member of the inner family. So now there's this harmony where each part is doesn't need to be extreme anymore. It's just adding their naturally valuable qualities. And the self is the leader and is listening, is getting input. If a part has a fear or has a concern or something they're valuing, they come to the self and they let the self know, and then the self leads with calm, clarity, confidence, compassion, creativity, and all of those great C words. So that's what it means. Once parts are healed, they can integrate into a healthy inner family. Okay. So that may have all been kind of a review for you, but I just really wanted to talk about what it looks like to heal any and every part in internal family systems. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below.